Welcome, Dilhan, Vinod, Yvonne. Pleasure to have you guys here. So our conversation is about biodiversity, is about how do we sustain our businesses going into the future. I'll lead off with Yvonne a little bit and ask you, Yvonne, your work has seen you work across Africa, across Asia in this particular field. And what are the recent trends you're seeing in terms of biodiversity? Are people understanding it as a concept? Is it becoming a bigger part of the sustainability effort? How are things going in the region and across the world?
Biodiversity is not new. Everybody knows we need it. Everybody knows that it has value, and it is difficult for the value to be realized. So in recent years, we know that carbon credits has really exploded in the market because of the very strong demand to reduce the footprints of many hard-to-abate industries, and also the strong awareness by governments, people, industries, multiple stakeholder platforms that we all need to do something today. So biodiversity is a co-benefit in most of the high-quality carbon projects. So there is an increased awareness that we should better articulate what is the pathway of impact, what is the measurement of success, and also how to generate a viable ecosystem so that biodiversity benefits can actually be accentuated and also be transferred into real dollars and cents across the supply chain to everybody in it. So I think this is a really exciting moment in time. Whenever there's crisis, there's opportunity for change. And I think we're in that juncture today.
Thanks, Yvonne. And yes, it is an exciting time. I think it's a curse. Is it a Chinese curse? May you live, or Middle Eastern curse. May you live in interesting times. Vinod, you've been part of the business and you are chairman now of the Hydramani Group. And sustainability has been a buzzword since perhaps the late 90s. And now we're kind of catching up to it. Everybody's on board. Everybody's got their sustainability departments, their sustainability reports. How difficult was that to engage in the beginning, and where do you feel it has come to now?
Thank you, Chanaka. Firstly, when Dilhan called me and said, you've got to come and have a chat about biodiversity on a stage with 140 people, I thought, I was a bit intimidated, but it's really amazing to see what the organization does. And I'm going to share our journey. It was a very simple and long journey, but I hope, it resonates with all of you. So I've been in the business 33 years. And when I joined the business, it was actually the time that, we had a lot of the factories near Colombo. And when I joined, it was the time that we set up these factories outside Colombo. So actually when I was thinking about this was actually, a sustainable solution. If I look at places like Dhaka and Jakarta, they didn't have that, and we still see a lot of the factories in the city. So that scheme 33 years ago was a kind of journey. It was our beginning and journey on the path to sustainability. As time went on, the business grew in Sri Lanka, and my uncle and a late colleague of mine, Arjuna Kurpu, we were looking to build a new factory. And my uncle said, how can we be different? A lot of people look at our industry as a polluting, kind of dirty industry. And he said, no, I want to do something completely different. At that time, it was, like 2005, 2006. And he just watched the Al Gore video, The Inconvenient Truth. And that really kind of stuck with him. And so we started on this journey, and the end product was a factory called Mahila, which a lot of you may know. It's in Kalutra. And that is big. It was the first, LEED certified factory in the country and probably in the region. And from then on, the journey started. We realized by doing good, it was also a good business. And from then on, we've gone on to many things. And I can talk about, looking at the stuff that you guys do. We are involved behind the scenes. For example, we invested in Bearer Brush, which is now the leading buyer of recycled plastic bottles in the country. So we're involved in that, converting those plastic bottles into pellets, into yarn, into apparel. So behind the scenes, a lot of stuff is happening that you guys don't know about, but that we're involved in. The buzzword in apparel, circularity. We'll talk about that a little later. But as I said, I think to your point, Chanaka, our industry is evolving, and Sri Lanka is a gem in terms of being able to show all the new ideas in sustainability. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Vinod. Yes, it's been an interesting journey so far. I'm sure we're just beginning. Dilhan, you inherited, personally as well as from a country's point of view, you inherited an industry where it was Sri Lanka's leading monoculture in a way. And we relied on tea to make our name in the world. We relied on tea for our foreign revenue and all of that. But I don't think it would be unfair to say that it is one of the things that hindered our biodiversity the worst at that time. I mean, you look at Sri Lanka's elephant population in the early 1800s to what it is now, and you could pinpoint that kind of agriculture to what we face. But since you've had to take that on, how did you first view this conceptually as an issue that needed to be addressed? And what do you think, are you happy with the process that has been taken towards bridging those gaps?
I think the first step would be to understand and accept the reality, because the thing with history is it is what it is. There's no point complaining about colonialism and all the unfairness of it. We need to get on with it. But then the second thing is, when you really look to the challenges we have and the solutions set out initially in 2005 by Lord Stern, but even recently, I was talking at the technical sessions about something I was researching just a few days ago from Fujian University, how they talked about how they improved the quality of tea in the worst, most degraded fields by using a combination of microorganisms, using certain materials, certain natural materials, and enriching the biodiversity of the soil. And here was a practical, cost-effective way of enhancing yield, enhancing quality, addressing a problem that we have. Now, my reality is that in nature, we have a solution to every single, well, most of the problems we have. We have some areas where you have declining profitability of tea. Well, those are also biodiversity rich. I was on Galamudana, Windsor Forest Estate last Friday. I mean, when you look around, you see the most incredible biodiversity. You see waterfalls, you see point endemic species, you see flora and fauna that is unprecedented. So there is an opportunity, I mean, there, and of course, some of the work that Talwakale Roshan is leading, you get incredible opportunity in ecotourism, but there's opportunity also in research tourism, which we are doing, for example, with some of the mangrove, the project in Kalpitia, not the BSL project, Dilma Conservation Project, inviting people to come to study. We have on Queensberry Estate, we have a Climate Change Research and Adaptation Center, which has a collaboration amongst 9 universities around the world. It's an opportunity for them to come and study nitrogen. There's University of Edinburgh coming and looking at ammonia, nitrogen, different elements. So collaboration to build a science-based response, because whether it is soils or the situation we have with soils, whether it is the evolution of different types, different cultivars, or whether it is the management. And in fact, even when it concerns the labor issue, there are clear science-based responses that are, I guess you could say, that are new economy-led. I mean, I'm talking about the distinction between the old economy being reliant on fossil fuels and the new being much more efficient, technology and sustainability-led. It's absolutely a no-brainer, and I can't imagine in this polycrisis of health, social, economic issues that we face, how anyone would do anything other than partner with biodiversity to find the solutions. It's there for quality, it's there for productivity, it's there for tourism, and it's there in a multitude of ways. We just need to adjust our mindset to find a solution rather than to sort of complain about what we are losing.
Adjusting mindsets has been a fairly common theme on social media recently in Sri Lanka, but across the world, Yvonne, have you found that traditional business models are changing their mindsets? Is biodiversity an investment that people are looking at making in the same way they would make a traditional investment?
It's a bit difficult to say what is a traditional investment in this climate, right? because we have traditional industries that are radically changing. We see the rise of how social media connects the smallholder farmer straight to consumer, and the advancement of advanced logistics, the rise of e-mobility and also payment systems allows disintermediation of a lot of the very convoluted supply chains. So traditional industries are getting a massive boost in their potential to reach difficult to reach marketplaces thanks to technology and also collaboration of many sectors. Traditional investment in the past is very much about stability. We don't have stability anywhere right now in the world. We wish we do, but I think we have to get used to a much more unpredictable world because of climate change, because of economic cycle. What goes up must come down, and it will go back up again. So when we talk about a lot of the investment into sustainability, into business models, if there is a potential for longevity in a business, then there is investment value in there because it's potentially addressing an evolving need. Sustainability cannot supplant the business strategy of any types of venture. So when we see business models evolve, even in traditional industries, sustainability adds value. It does not become the standalone pillar that can garnish any dish, right? So I would say that it's very exciting to see the most unlikeliest corner of the industry starting to transform. However, we cannot see sustainability just as something that you compensate for, you budget for reporting only, and you only talk about it.
I'll stay with you, Yvonne, in the sense that when you say compensate for, can you just elaborate a little bit more about what you mean compensate for sustainability?
This is probably a little bit of a jargon, right? Because industry experts like to throw up barriers by using a lot of jargon words. So in sustainability approaches on the strategic level, we have the compensatory approach, which is about paying your due because you have to. So paying your due when you have to is in the form of paying taxes, doing the mandatory reporting, or fulfilling your legal obligations. If you don't, there will be some penalty. So that's compensation for things that you should have done, or to compensate for things that are pegged as your liability. So mandatory carbon offsets and also mandatory disclosure comes into that category. Compensation is not an investment. So the other side of the spectrum is the investment approach, where investment is a risk-adjusted return decision. So when you look at sustainability from an investment approach, it becomes something where calibrated risk-taking comes into place, going beyond just doing what you are supposed to and doing things not from the motivation of avoiding penalty, but to look at what kind of risks do I take on, who do I take on the risk with, how do I front load investments, and how long can I expect to wear the investment until it comes into fruition. So it's a much more complex decision-making process now.
A complex decision-making process, Vinod, and did you find that that decision-making process was difficult in the boardroom when it first came about? Because obviously sustainability brought with it a set of expenses and a set of resources that you need to get on board, a set of resources that you needed to deploy. All of that comes at a fairly significant cost for businesses. So what was that conversation like when it first happened in your company?
I mean, yeah, when we set up Mahila, if I remember, it was probably 30% or 35% more expensive than a traditional factory. But I think as a board, we took a long-term approach and we said we're going to use this as an example. And yeah, there was some skepticism, but looking back, 20 years later, it paid off. I want to give you another story because this is very close to my heart. We were the pioneers in setting up what was now Windforce. And I remember, I was sitting with Azgi, my partner, at the Colombo Club, and we were about to open, we had all the banks of Sri Lanka, some of who were here, in the boardroom. And we had to open this LC for the first wind plant in Sri Lanka. And none of the banks are going to give us the money. And, literally 50 kilometers away on the other side of the sea, India had thousands of windmills, but there was this big disbelief that it wasn't going to work in Sri Lanka. And then it was just one banker, I won't name the bank because it's unfair, who said, Vinod, I believe in you. And that's how we started the first wind plant in Sri Lanka, and the rest is history of now we're getting foreigners to come and invest in our country. But yeah, so there's always this disbelief that sustainability doesn't work or it's not good, and you have to get over that mindset. You have to get over that, and the people who don't believe need to be convinced there's a longer term goal. Mahila Tex is now, Mahila is almost 20 years old, and now we're going on to our next project. In our industry, the textile industry is probably one of the most polluting industries in our supply chain. So we've decided, we have a new project now called Mahila Tex, which we just announced a few months ago. And we aim to make that the most sustainable mill in South Asia. It'll cost us again a lot more, but again, I've pushed the board and I said this is longer term thinking, and that's what we're going to do. So it's about longer term thinking.
Vinod, you have the benefit, I don't know whether it's a benefit or whether it's a disadvantage of being the head of a family company for now, right? But how do you push that across to a varied set of shareholders, a bunch of directors who have different shareholders' interests to think of? I would assume that as a family company, you're pretty aligned in your thinking on that front, but what happens when you're dealing with an entire diverse set of interests?
No, as I said, you have to make it it's one of your key pillars, right? So I think no company can ignore sustainability as one of the key pillars of the strategies going forward. For us, it evolved, from 20 years ago. So we've been in it a long time, so it's not difficult to convince our board. But anyone new, you just cannot ignore it. We can talk a little bit about what's going to happen in the rest of the world, in Europe in a little bit, Chanaka, but it cannot be ignored. So it's something that it's a non-discussion point.
Dilhan, as chairman of BSL, obviously you have a passion for this subject. How difficult has it been to get the collective to come on board with you? You've got 55 members, only 5 of them, unfortunately, are small and medium enterprises. How many more of them do you need to make BSL a real success to get everyone pulling in the same direction?
BSL and our impact depends on collaboration. We have to do it together. For the first 5 years, as Shirani will tell you, we had to make a round of calls before the AGM and tell people that we were serving hoppers, because that's the only way we could get anyone to come for the food. But latterly, I must say it's been fantastic. And by the way, we have hoppers today, so we're continuing the trend. Latterly, what has happened is a lot of people have realized that what we were saying from the beginning wasn't just a bunch of tree huggers coming along and trying to green the world for the sake of it, but seeing the relentless pushback from consumers and the fact that more and more failing to be sustainable pushes you into a cycle of price competition. Seeing that, many people decided to come and ask us for support. And the reason why BSL has relevance here is that we don't just say, look, if you want to plant 1 million trees, we'll plant 1 million trees with you. We look for the science-based approach. We look for baseline. We look for how we can help to monetize that, how we can support with, not BSL support, but assist in securing, whether it is climate finance. Shirani talked about biodiversity credits in the report, whether it's carbon credits, whichever, because there's always a solution, and it's always a sustainable solution. It's just a question of looking beyond the outdated business model to say, look, how do I make it happen? And if you look around, there's over $4 trillion of climate finance that hasn't found much of a home. Of course, much of it has, but much of it hasn't. And wherever you pitch a good project that is science-based, you're pretty likely to get some sort of support. So that's an opportunity. So particularly in the plantation sector, but also if you look at it beyond, if you look at the last, in 2020, the Nature report, I think it was in the World Economic Forum, they analyzed 163 industries, finding that over 50% of them were highly vulnerable or significantly vulnerable in terms of biodiversity loss. Look at some of the realities that we are seeing. The Amazon used to sequester carbon to an extent of, I think it was something like 5%, but no longer. Why? Because of the extent of deforestation happening there. So understanding some of these macro statistics and understanding that influences consumer behavior, particularly Gen Z, which is incredibly vociferous in this. You know, I can tell you that 10 years ago, people used to write and ask us about tea. What about this tea? What about that tea? Today, only 50% of our community around the world ask us about tea. The rest ask us, are you doing this? What are you doing for sustainability? What are you doing for the environment? What are you doing for soils? They're asking us details of what we do to align with their emphasis on sustainability, environmental sustainability. So I think what we need at Biodiversity Sri Lanka is we will provide the science. We have incredible body of knowledge in professors, Devaka, Dr. Rohan Pitevra, I mean, a whole load of scientists, and we can provide that bridge. But in order to deliver impact, to move the needle at a national level, to be able to advocate effectively, we need the strength of our members. We're a member-driven organization. It's not IUC and Chamber and Dilma. It's the members collectively who, through our actions, will do something significant. Kanneliya is a fantastic example. It started with 10 members, including Government of Sri Lanka, and that was groundbreaking. It's the first time that we were able to build the trust between the private sector and the state sector to steward, even if it was a degraded ecosystem, it built trust. And that's a template on which we can do great things. And that's, I think, the uniqueness of Biodiversity Sri Lanka.
You spoke about price competition, Dilhan, and that's a cannibalistic world to be in. And in order to avoid that, do you find that consumers nowadays are maybe willing to spend a little bit more money to make sure that the ethics of their consumer products are top-notch?
5 years ago, I would have told you that the research says so, but the consumers don't walk the talk. But today, I can tell you the consumers do walk the talk. And the reason for that is the fact that today they fear the loss of something that we have taken for granted for generations. And I can tell you that from my own experience, offering Ceylon tea, which is in general approximately 5 times more expensive on average than any of our most of our competitor nations, producers, looking at lower cost producers from around the world. I'm talking about Sri Lanka as a country. What we have, in addition to our quality, of equal importance is the biodiversity of Sri Lanka. Is showing them the images of our beautiful plantations, showing them the heritage, showing them the sustainability, showing them, and of course looking at all of these aspects which are aligned with their preferences. So at the same time, you have businesses that don't have any of that. They also survive, but they're at the bottom of the shelf in terms of price. But we are relatively a high-cost producer. We're an island. We produce the best cinnamon in the world, the best tea in the world, the best cashew in the world, best cardamom, clove, etc. There's a lot of stuff. Pepper goes on. And in addition to which, we know that others like them, they have the most exquisite craftsmanship in what they do in the garment sector. So they're pitching high valuation. What is the difference between us and some guy who's producing cheap in some sort of sweatshop? It's sustainability. It's the fact that he can claim to be LEED certified. It's the fact that he can claim to be doing the kind of environmental initiatives that he's doing in factories around the world. It's the same for us when we involve consumers. I was with one of our longest partners, Emirates Airline, yesterday, and chief amongst our discussions, 40% of our discussion was based on the topic of biodiversity. How do we engage our passengers with the good things that you're doing? So that is a selling point. If I go and I tell them, look, I'm going to give you the cheapest price, I can tell you that in 50% of cases, we will lose the account because there's always going to be someone cheaper. But if I go and tell them, look, this is a product that comes with the assurance of kindness to nature. We are doing these climate interventions. We are supporting small farmers in understanding the changing climate. We are looking at protecting novel species. We're looking at environmental education, looking at all of these factors that we talk about connected to biodiversity. That is the edge that Sri Lanka can have because we are an island. We don't have a large internal market to sustain ourselves. We need to talk to the world. The world is sensitive to biodiversity, sensitive to sustainability in a way that they never have been. So, in summary from that very long answer for which I apologize, consumers are willing to pay. They're willing to pay a premium because the guys in Poland and Czech Republic right now who are suffering from floods realize why the intensity of this flood that they haven't had since 1973, why it is. It is caused by climate change and it needs to be mitigated. And how can they do it? They can do it by through their purchasing power. Conscious consumerism is stronger today, more powerful than ever before.
Vinod, you're in a unique position as an apparel manufacturer in the sense that you have to comply with a lot of the US and the EU regulations, but at the same time you also have to source from people in Asia, people who are going through the same problems that we might be going through as a nation in Sri Lanka. But do you find that the richer countries, the global north, if I could use that word, are willing to also fund the kind of compliance requirements, the stringent compliance requirements that they are putting on you, or are you having to expend on because you're the middle of that sandwich?
Thanks. Yeah, that's a big topic at the moment, Janaka. So the EU, I don't know if you guys are aware, are coming up with these new regulations for transparency. And it doesn't just go back. So, for example, we are the manufacturer, and then they're asking us to go back 2 or 3 more steps. That means to the fabric, yarn, etc. So it's a full traceable model. And that's the regulations coming in the next 4 or 5 years. It's for every industry, from us to Ferrari to loads of industries. And everyone's scrambling because no one it's coming very, very soon. And no, our customers are not going to pay for it. They're putting a lot of onus on us. But I think, Sri Lanka is in a very unique position because we're a relatively small industry and we've been very transparent over the years. I think we can leverage on that and take advantage and be a supplier of choice, not only in apparel but in tea and various other industries, because a lot of the stuff that's been asked for we're already doing. There will be some cost involved, and there'll be some blockchain models or models that will have to be adopted, but I don't think that's going to be difficult. And I'm very positive that we as a country will come out on top for that. But yeah, in the next 4 or 5 years, there's a big change coming.
Ivan, GRI, or the reporting initiative, is something that has come through quite recently, and it hasn't been really implemented across the board so far, but it's an aspirational model yet. Do you think that this is going to have a big impact like it did for sustainability as a buzzword back in the day?
I have a unique perspective because I'm part of the expert groups that contribute to making the standards for GRI. So GRI is the world's most adopted sustainability disclosure standard, but it's not just about disclosure. As ex-lawyer, recovering, we share that commonality. We want to understand, as lawyers, what do things mean? So taxonomies, definitions, and also standards have a key role to play so that everybody can have the same understanding, and then things can be measured and compared on a fair basis. That's the point of having GRI. So that what does labor mean? It includes seasonal labor. It includes a lot of casual labor, right? And also that's important in the forestry and agriculture industry because you don't sign off your 8-hour day as a farmer. That's what you do for your family, for your culture, for your livelihood, full-time 24/7 without a break. What does child labor mean, right? Does that mean someone who is under the age of 18 contributing to a working farm is a child labor automatically? A lot of the definitions need to take into consideration what is real and what is legal given the jurisdictions that they operate from. So without these guardrails, it is very, very difficult for any entity to know whether they're doing the right thing from the perspective of all their stakeholders externally. So having alignment with international standards such as GRI and also, for example, ISO, it's better understood, right? You will understand that how you're playing against others, and also there is interoperability and reciprocity in how you work with others. It also gives a lot more confidence to financing, to investment, to decisions where money needs to flow and accountability needs to be shared. So I think that it can be said that it is aspirational for GRI to be propagated. But how is it aspirational, that businesses want to be measured fairly? I think everybody wants to actually be seen in the correct light by the people that matters to them. So relying on standards is one way of doing that, and it's doing that from a perspective of being fair and being transparent, which I think a lot of Sri Lankan business already know what that is like.
Speaking of measurements, Yvonne, how do we do that accurately? How do you build awareness in the community who are the consumers, in the businesses who are the producers? How do you tell them, look, the loss of this species is going to cost you X amount of dollars. The loss of these two species is going to cost you 3X amount of dollars. Because there has been research that has told us that there's trillions of dollars in losses in biodiversities. But how are these calculated and how do they translate into real action?
Impact measurements is always about perspective, right? And when you talk about dollars, my question always is who pays and who receives? It's not just a number printed somewhere and for everybody to look at. It is something that one side of the economy is looking upon as something that they've lost, whilst who is actually gaining, right? So when we look at impact measurements, it's not just about the overall impartial number, which we know means not much unless it's contextualized. From a perspective of who pays, who receives, who shares, and who takes away from the system. A lot of the impact measurement is tied to productivity, as in per unit measure or intensity, right? So that applies to emission intensity, and also, dare I say, we should extend it to many other contexts as well, so that we can see sustainability is not about constraining productivity. It is about making sure that correct measurement is done in line with productivity. And productivity translates very easily into cost and revenue and other considerations where who pays, who receives, and who shares can be easily tracked. So impact measurement, one should not wait for a universal consensus to arrive. One should look at it from a perspective of how do I integrate what is the right kind of impact measurement into my current models, into my current ways of measuring whatever I put in and whatever I get out, so that I can use that as a tool to communicate with people I need to convince, so that there's utilitarian value coming out of it. Otherwise, I think this is going to be a very frustrating topic for all.
Yeah, it is. And say, for instance, Vinod wants to build his next green factory and wants a net zero emissions on that. And he wants to measure the impact of that, sell it to his CFO and says, look, I need this much money in order to build this factory. This is what it's going to give us. Is there a product that will enable him to do that?
I want to open this up for my co-panelists as well. As you know, a smart factory or green factory and all of that is not a product, right? It's a strategy. And when we're talking from the lens of CFO, a lot of times there is a degree of projection forward, right? So this goes back to that complex decision making about risk-adjusted return. So when we talk about how do CFOs now raise investments, extend their lines of credit, talk to the various partners they have, there are so many perspectives that may not align. And then who pays, who receives, who benefits from the greener way of doing something. You can't really productize that. You have to tie it down to the bread and butter. And CFOs are leaning on the advancements of integrated reporting. I know that a lot of people have heard all the buzzwords of ISSB and all the different taxonomies that are coming in to align accounting metrics with sustainability metrics. So that you can put a dollar amount, right, on sustainability efforts. That is coming in 2 years' time. But what do we do now? What do we do now is about making sure you find the right ways of integrating what you say you want to do, your roadmaps, your goals, your undertakings to different stakeholders, and put it into your plans, your budget, your projections, and your financial reporting, as well as the strategy communication. Those things are not exciting. It has to be done. It's not easy, but it has to be done. CFO's job is doing that, right? CEO's job is doing that. And I think they know how to do that already. We just need to put the right lens on what they need to do. I want to pass the baton over so I can drink some water.
Vinod, what I'd like to ask you also is how much interaction is there perhaps between your sustainability department, your finance department, your HR department, maybe your operations department? How much of interplay is there? How much do you think there should be? And Dilhan, if I can ask you the same question of your company.
Just to briefly answer Yvonne's question, 20 years ago when we were building Mahila, it was us and an idea, and there was no ecosystem support. I think, again, looking at new projects and looking at the country, we all agree that we have to be an export-driven economy. And I think as an ecosystem, it's the banks, the government, and all stakeholders to make it attractive enough for companies, no matter how big they are, to have that sustainability pillar. So, looking now, I know, the banks are getting funding from the World Bank and stuff to do sustainable projects. So I think that needs to continue. And Sri Lanka can leverage on that and be a point of difference to our major competitors, India, Bangladesh, Vietnam. So it has to be an ecosystem kind of situation. Just the individual firm can afford so much, but they need the help of the ecosystem. In terms of your question, Chanaka, unlike tea, I don't know how Dylan gets extra funny, but our business is a very price-sensitive business. So sustainability is a pillar, but so we have this tension of these young buyers, customers who are being driven by the profit incentive, yet we are preaching, the sustainability kind of mantra. So what we've created is these teams to kind of, when we're discussing new designs or new products, that we have these teams of innovation teams of designers, of our commercial teams and our production teams looking at how we can make sustainable product at the correct price for the customer. So there are obviously a few aspirational customers like Patagonia and brands like that live on sustainability, but to take it to the mainstream is another conversation together. People drink tea, but they don't eat garments, right? So you have to make someone feel differently when they're wearing something, right? So it's a different kind of sense, but we're getting there. And as I said, Sri Lanka has a lot to leverage on, and other industries. In terms of tourism, I've never been to Costa Rica, but I've heard how much they play on the whole eco-friendly, environmentally friendly, and I don't think we do enough of that in other industries. I think we've had success, and I think tea has had some success, but I think there's so much more we can leverage on.
I guess from a tea perspective, the simple reality is you can't drive sustainability top down. It needs to be a mindset change. And so from our perspective, some of the regulations that we know referred to a moment ago that have already been implemented in Europe, more that are coming, demand packaging material sustainability. It means that the procurement department must have an understanding and an appreciation, embracing sustainability, because the good stuff, sustainable stuff, costs more. So they need to understand. They need to understand to ask the right questions. So again, it's a mindset thing, and you've really got to believe in it, because when you look at it, The world talks a lot about compostability, about recyclability, etc. But the availability of the materials and the research and development, it's limited. There's a lot of catch-up going on, because during the period of COVID, when many of these projects were shut down or postponed, you had this, we lost literally the COVID years plus maybe 2 or 3 others while the whole process restarted. So the R&D is 2 to 3 years behind. So we have customers who will come and tell us, okay, I need a compostable envelope, and then they'll put it into a tea bag envelope, and they'll put it into composting pit and say, you know, it's been 90 days, things still there. So, you know, you then have to get your machinery changed, which means your engineering department needs to understand and embrace it. You need to understand your temperatures, you need to understand safety, QA. So, I mean, I suppose from our perspective, putting this all into how do you change that mindset, one of the things we have done, I mean, while we have a great conservation and sustainability team, which Rishan heads right now, we have a concept called Find Your Inspiration at MJF, where we tell our teams, look, you have a certain amount of time within the company's time where you can go and indulge in one of these areas that may inspire you. I mean, it could be teaching English in one of our schools, it could be getting involved in biodiversity. And I was really thrilled to see some of the examples of, in our hostels, we see some of the staff growing organic vegetables on the rooftop, some of the teams in their own homes setting up beekeeping, really embracing, because what we do in going around the country and teaching and training our centers, doing stuff, you can't keep it to the thing that you do at work. If you don't embrace it, we're not going to get the benefit of the involvement and the strength that you get from having a bottom-up approach. And right now, the technology is in every instance, from the example of the microorganisms that I mentioned on the Fujian University study to any other area. It's the people, it's the engineer responsible who knows that, okay, compostable material might respond better at this temperature. I could, by laminating at this level, I could get a better result. You need everyone to come on board. So my advice, yes, of course, have your sustainability departments, but don't compartmentalize sustainability. We need to make sure that it comes deep down. And it's not very difficult. You need to simply go and visit Kannelia, have a look at some of the historical pictures and see what it was, what it is, and what it's become now in terms of the species, you know, incredible number of species there and so on. And then you'll see, yes, our actions can reverse some of the terrible damages we're seeing.
Thanks for that. Speaking of a bottom-up approach, I'd like an independent, when I say independent, I mean a non-Sri Lankan eye on this, Yvonne. We have a human-elephant conflict, which I'm sure you may have heard or read about. And when Dilhan speaks of bottom-up, obviously there are farmers who don't want elephants destroying the crops that they've been growing for the last few months, because that's literally their only livelihood. Then you've got, I can use the phrase because Dilhan used it previously, you've got the tree huggers who think, okay, all elephants are you know, beyond the pale, you cannot touch them, there's no harm that can come to a single animal. So you've got these two extremes. And in terms of managing biodiversity, and I use that word very deliberately, managing, what kind of approach would you give to that particular problem where you've got one interest on one side, another interest on the other side, and businesses in the middle with a lot of soul searching to do?
Let's just cut to the chase, right? This is an incentive problem, right? If the smallholder farmers are really struggling to keep their livelihood, then of course they feel isolated and they'll do whatever they can to protect their livelihood. They have no friend. The poor elephant feels the same way. And for everybody that wants to solve the problem, unless their incentive structure changes, the problem will persist. So how do we deal with the incentive structure change? That's a system level change. So, you know, as we heard from Vinod, in some industries, the cost is still not being shared, right? And even when there's more conscious consumption, meaning consumers are paying higher for less, not paying lower per unit for more, do the benefits pass down to the people that needs it the most? Or do the benefits accumulate to where it can be easily accessed, right? So when we talk about the human versus elephant conflict, that's representing a lot of the externalities that still hasn't been addressed. So a lot of the incentive problems is not about let's do more charity runs, let's make sure that we subsidize some of the necessities. It's about finally putting together all the stakeholders along that value chain to see how do we minimize friction, how do we make sure that the funding that goes to, as Johan has mentioned, there's a lot of funding that is dedicated towards biodiversity and sustainability. Are they trickling down? Are they reaching the end of the value chain all the way upstream to the smallholder farmers, and other smallholder farmers being educated and given the right resources and support, and have the community rally around them, if I can put it figuratively, so that they're not alone in fighting against the elements. And the elephants feel the same way too, right?
So you're saying that maybe doing R&D on what's the most effective fencing technology, what's the best method to keep animals out without causing them harm, what's the best method to find productivity in the soil, all those things can be transplanted if we were just not trying to thrash a square peg into a round hole and look at the incentives instead.
And the governance? That's another sensitive topic, right? We know that technology is just a tool. It doesn't replace the infrastructure of policy, of incentives and behavior. So without the governance around, without the rights and also the repercussions being institutionalized, a lot of these great efforts just don't stick around. So, I know I'm speaking at a sensitive time, given what's going to happen on Saturday. I hope that everyone is looking forward to perhaps some changes on the governance structure so that there's longevity in good things being implemented and there is safeguard for all the different change programs, right, that everybody's trying to put into place. Incentives are temporary. Governance is more lasting. And I hope that we can not look at technology as the only saving grace, but look at a lot of the things that are more difficult but has larger impact.
If I can use that subject of governance now to speak to Vinod and Dilhan about their perceptions of that governance. Vinod, you've already kind of said, okay, banks need to be a little bit more cooperative. There are a few banks here that I think are members of BSL already. And are you saying, perhaps, maybe you can't say it, but I will, are you saying that, look, you need to look at what we're doing in terms of strategy, you need to look at capital, and you need to look at the expenditure that we need to put in here, and maybe you'll need to be a little bit more flexible with giving us debt to do this because, hey, we are the ones who are bearing the cost?
Disclaimer, Chanaka, I'm on a bank board as well, so I have to be a little diplomatic here. But no, I seriously, in all seriousness, no, as I said, we have many different sizes of firms in the country, and we have to be able to allow everyone that access to be able to do the right thing. And yes, it's a government, private sector, banking kind of partnership that needs to happen. And as I said, if we put it as a country strategy and say that Sri Lanka stands for this, we can go forward. I remember many years ago, the apparel industry had a slogan called "Garments Without Guilt." And this was maybe 10, 15 years ago, and we went around the world saying that, you can come and visit us and see that we're not running sweatshops. You can come and visit all our factories. And it was a total transparent strategy, and, we gained a lot of kudos for that. So similarly, if Sri Lanka was to say, we aim to be at these targets by 2050 or 2045, and then agree to that and then go around the world canvassing that, I think that's very powerful. And then we have the backing of the government and the financial industry and private sector in a combined effort, then it's a very powerful message. So it can't be just, I think we're at the point where firms want to do good, but with the current difficulties, they're constrained. So if there's a combined partnership it can go a long way.
Given the impending events on Saturday, Dilhan, whoever takes over upcoming, what would you like to tell them in terms of biodiversity safety? What would your washing list, laundry list kind of be from a government that comes in and says, look, we want to do the best for the country. We are trying from our end as business people, BSL are trying their best. This is the help you can give us. What would those low-hanging fruit be for governments to go with immediately?
Well, there's lots of things I'd like to tell them, but where biodiversity is concerned, picture the Nine Arches Bridge surrounded by concrete. Would it be interesting? Probably not. Would it be Instagrammable? Definitely not. And therefore, would it help us in presenting our nation to the world? No. We're a small country in a very large world. We need to establish our point of difference, our unique selling proposition. Sri Lanka is blessed with rich biodiversity. So whether you look at tourism, and as you heard, whether you look at apparel, or if you look at agriculture, it is that biodiversity that is going to sustain and fuel that point of difference. We can't compete on price with Vietnam. We can't compete on price with India, with so many other countries. But it is that biodiversity, because today, no matter what, marketing is driven by images. If it's not Instagrammable, your restaurant will not succeed. If it's not Instagrammable, your cafe, your business, your product will not work. And therefore, our biodiversity, and I mean, I'm reminded of a story that Hiran said at this forum a few years ago, talking about Villuyana and talking about their conservation project there, which the Loris conservation project, which really is a point of difference. I mean, I still remember it. I think it was, 3-4 years ago that Hiran was talking about this. And I think all of us know there's a crocodile in that pond. There are loris in that little forest that they have conserved. And so that is a point of difference for Villuyana. It's a luxury accommodation, but you go there for the biodiversity. And today when you see the pictures of Sri Lanka, people are not coming here to see the Lotus Tower or to see our buildings. They're actually coming here because they want to experience nature. And regardless of whether it is food, you can connect our food to nature, because you have an Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia of 2,000 different elements. In the West, you have Western medication is typically based on 200 elements. Our richness, whether it is in medicine or in any other aspect, is in our biodiversity. So when you look at Sri Lankan cuisine, most of those ingredients can be connected with a specific aspect of biodiversity, connected with a specific health benefit. That is a powerful statement. When you visit Sri Lanka and people talk about our Southern Expressway or visiting the mountains, tea country, they don't talk about our buildings, they don't talk about any of that. They talk about the richness of biodiversity, the animals we experienced and so on. So what I would tell whoever comes in, manage this. Understand that there are limitations on capacity. So align your export strategy, align your tourism strategy to our asset. Build on the resource that we have. Don't destroy it. You can too soon have a situation like Bali. Bali a few years ago was the envy of the world. Why? Because the Russians were coming, the Indians were coming. There were lots of people going to Bali. I don't know if you've been there recently. Yeah, it's not a pretty sight because you have these malls that have come up. There's concrete everywhere. And what happened to the beautiful rice fields and the pictures that originally made Bali, it's no longer there. So I think we need to understand that Sri Lanka is a phenomenal asset. It is the biodiversity that fuels tea, Ceylon tea, cashew and all those cinnamon, all those products. When we talk about cinnamon, we've recently started doing some work in cinnamon. We're not talking only, of course there is medical and health benefits, but we're not talking only about that. What really embellishes our story is the biodiversity. Run a drone over the cinnamon fields at dawn, and you've got the most magical marketing story ever. Go to tea country, talk Ceylon tea. Since 1985, my father has been presenting images of Sri Lanka's beautiful biodiversity. People often told us that we were investing more in promoting Sri Lanka than the tourist board. At sometimes it's true. And I think that's what we need to realize, that it is biodiversity that fuels the uniqueness of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's uniqueness in medicine, in our products, in our appeal to the world, hinges very much on our biodiversity.
So I think it's fair to say, if you forgive the metaphor, that Sri Lanka is the pretty girl at the biodiversity bar, and we need to protect ourselves from rich old men, in the sense that money talks, Yvonne, and that's an aphorism that's stayed the test of time. So what does a country in Sri Lanka's unique position? We don't have 200 million people like Pakistan do. We don't have 1 billion people like China or India do, to maybe be self-sufficient as a marketplace. So we are an export-driven marketplace. We also have to import our food. But in that context, what does a country like Sri Lanka, who only has biodiversity to really offer as an asset, has that asset been valued enough? Can we push that value to other countries to maintain our position, to make sure we don't get exploited? Are those things that we can do without government involvement?
So going on your analogy of biodiversity being the pretty girl at the bar, fending against all the hungry eyes, social media has a hashtag called choosing the bear, right? So for some of us that are not aware of the whole choosing the bear movement, it's about when any woman or person is in a potentially dangerous or tricky situation, do you choose a bear or do you choose a man as the next entity that you encounter? It's almost like prisoner's dilemma. So the movement is that overwhelmingly people choose the bear instead of choosing between different men. Not a gender play, but to talk about what is the third option, right? You don't need to think about what degree do you compromise yourself, what degree do you lose yourself. If you choose the bear, which funny enough in the analogy is choosing nature, right? What do you figure out in not going down the tried and tested ways of exchanging and shortchanging your valuable resources for short-term gain, but to look at what is a best negotiated outcome. Hello, you're a negotiator, right? The best negotiated outcome with entities that were traditionally not in the exploitative model. So multi-stakeholder platforms has made a difference in some sectors, such as natural rubber, in coffee, and also aligning a lot of the powers that be, meaning not just the multilateral entities that finance development finance, but also looking at a lot of multinational companies that have long-term interest in keeping strategic assets and longevity of this type of strategic assets being preserved. So natural rubber forestry faces a lot of the same issues that biodiversity preservation in Sri Lanka faces. You have biodiversity-rich locations in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Africa facing a lot of threat of labor shortage, a lot of land grabbing, and also disease. Meanwhile, if you actually look at how those commodities were historically traded, they are all traded on volume, and the cost per unit is traded on exchanges, which is more easily swayed by financial markets than by what's happening fundamentally on the ground. So what happens? The industries choose the bear. What do you mean by choosing the bear? Is that they integrate with petrochemical, with mobility, with many types of industries that will benefit from the longevity of having access to natural rubber, so that they will have a useful resource that have tensile strength, that have a lot of qualities that are irreplaceable with synthetics, so that they can co-invest into preserving what is there, for capacity building, for looking at how to prevent diseases, allowing sustainable finance to come into play, not just as bond issuance, but look at what are the derivatives and a lot of more creative structures that you can put in to provide liquidity when you need it, not to give money when you don't need it. So all of those choosing the bear moments have shown some change in the conditions of specific types of industries and nature-bound, I would say, corners of the earth. I would say choosing the bear and maybe not sticking on choosing who is the lesser evil may be a good solution for all of us to look at.
Well, that's interesting. Do you find the next 10 years perhaps of business terrifying or exciting?
Very exciting. As I say, I think Sri Lanka is in a very unique position. I think Dilan talked about biodiversity. We are on a continued sustainability journey, and I think it's extremely exciting. As I said, we're all excited about Saturday. I think whoever comes into power, I think the direction can't change. Sri Lanka is in a very unique position. You just look at across the sea, 30 kilometers from here, Tamil Nadu is growing at 8-9%. All it takes is for us to kind of partner with them in some shape or form, and the dimensions change it. So I'm extremely positive. We're making a huge investment in the country, backward integration here, because we see the future. So extremely excited.
Dilhan, finally, do you see the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, the members thereof, other big businesses, how do you convince them to perhaps maybe be a little bit more altruistic when it comes to biodiversity, maybe give a leg up to people who are struggling to stay above survival line, and that will pay off for everyone in the long run?
I think awareness, and that's the direction we've been focusing on. We partnered with the Chamber and Global Compact with the Climate Summit to explain, amongst other things, biodiversity aspects. Yvonne was there and presented solutions, and I think the key thing is to help induce that mindset, to understand that the changes, if you embrace the changes, you'll find the solutions, rather than complain about the changes and stick to the old system. And I think that's where we see a big difference. But the more and more, very much like what we have here at Biodiversity Sri Lanka. Going back 5 years, we never had to worry about whether we could get a room large enough to fit our members. I think in the first few years we were struggling to get a quorum, which is where the hoppers came in, and then I think that was fixed after that. But I think as we see more and more people understanding the reality, but at the same time the regulatory environment also changing to a point where they have no choice but to accept that, we are offering solutions and helping them to also understand that in this whole mix, the problem isn't beyond us, because I think that's the initial response often, going back a few years, was almost of the deer caught in the headlights, thinking, oh my God, what do I do? This is too big for me. Then the second reaction was typically, it's a problem of government. It's not my issue. It's too big for me. But then once we started these collaborations, help people understand we can together move the needle, we can translate those positive environmental interventions into customer engagement, into benefit for our product, then we saw the difference. And I think many of the members here, I think some are here for altruistic reasons, but others are here because they believe, of course they believe, but they understand that the green economy, the green growth pathway offers vastly more opportunity than the old way. And which is why I echo everything Vinod also just said about the excitement of the future, because we now have a surplus of green growth options. The pathways that are available to us are incredible. It's just a question of us adjusting our mindset, aligning our colleagues, and moving in that direction. Easier said than done, but if you ever need to convince your colleagues, There'll be more hoppers at the next AGM. Bring them along and we'll help you.
A final word, Yvonne, from your experience cross-regionally. I know lawyers are trained to be pessimists, as we were discussing previously, but a final word of encouragement to our membership that biodiversity and sustainability along with it is the way forward.
You give me a really hard task, right? Because law school has trained us to think of all the potential risks and how to address them. But a bit of optimism is the fact that you're here, right? You're here because you think that there is something you can learn, something that you can explore with each other and also hearing from us on what does biodiversity mean, what are the opportunities you can look at. Otherwise, you wouldn't come here today. Fighting against the traffic and all the unpredictable things ahead of this Saturday. I think we inherently know that this is a moment of change. The old does not give us protection, especially the old ways of doing business. The new is already upon us. And I can see all the attention that you've been paying. And please, we'll be eating hoppers over there, thanks to Dilhan, and bring us questions. The hope is that we can save each other. The hope is that in nature we can find solutions, because that's how we have survived as a species for thousands of years. And we can continue to do so. So I think we are all convinced that we will find a way out. And even as lawyers who have gone through years of law school to train the optimism out of us, I know that this is a conviction that we can all agree upon.
Nature is a place where sometimes deer get killed by leopard, but all in all, everyone thrives. Ms. Yvonne Zhang, Deloitte Singapore Sustainability Director, Mr. Vinod Hydramani, Chairman of Hydramani Group, and Mr. Dilhan Fernando, the Chairman of Dilma Teas. Thank you very much for your contribution today. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. That was a very insightful discussion. Shanaka, thank you so much. Before we close the panel's proceedings, we would like to invite our new director, Mr. Dimitri Kure, to please come forward and hand over some tokens of appreciation to our distinguished panelists and the moderator. Thank you very much, Mr. Kure. Thank you very much to our panelists and our moderator for coloring BSL's 9th annual CEO Forum and for all those wise and exemplary insights. To bring the event to a close, I now invite Mr. Thilal Nanakara, our Outreach and Communications Lead, to step over to the podium to deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you to all from me.
I trust that all of you are having a great evening, and it has been very, very interesting, the panel discussion. I think it was very real as well. As we wrap up this wonderful evening, it's my absolute pleasure to deliver a big heartfelt thank you on behalf of Biodiversity Sri Lanka. There are a few people that we have to thank, and so please do bear with us in a sense. First off, let us acknowledge our initiating partners, the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Dilma Conservation, and IUCN. You've been our guiding stars since day one. and we are forever grateful for your unwavering vision, leadership, and support in helping us grow and become more and more relevant. As many of you know, we kicked off the action last week with our 9th annual technical sessions. These were buzzing with energy, featuring 2 brilliant segments on corporate reporting on nature and biodiversity and climate risks and green finance. So a huge thank you to everyone who made that possible, especially Mr. Dilhan Fernando for inaugurating the session by giving us direction. Our fantastic keynote speakers, Ms. Pumi Sumanasekara and Mr. Ranga Pallavela. The panel moderator, Ms. Anosha Koralege, moderators, Ms. Anosha Koralege and Ms. Prashani Ilangasekara, and of course our esteemed panelists who brought so much insight to the discussions. To all of you who attended, your presence and engagement mean a world to us. We are thrilled to keep bringing you cutting-edge knowledge and global insights. Now let's talk about today's CEO Forum. A massive thank you to Shanaka Amarasinghe for doing an outstanding job moderating today's interesting and challenging discussion on redefining global business, pioneering sustainability for a greener tomorrow. It sounded a bit cliche, but you made it very real by kind of talking about Sri Lanka and the realities that we are facing and bringing it out from the panel. And to our panelists, Ms. Yon Zhang, who flew all the way from Singapore just to be with us. Thank you for choosing the bear and coming here today. Mr. Vinod Hydramani, Chairman of Hydramani Group, and Mr. Dilhan Fernando, not only our chairman, but also the heart behind Dilma Ceylon Tea Company. Your thought-provoking insights will undoubtedly inspire us all to tackle sustainability challenges with a new and real sense of purpose and passion. To our outgoing board, Mr. Hasrat Munasinghe, Mr. Lasit Vimalaratna, Ms. Sayuri Daluatha, and Dr. Shamen Vidanage, we deeply appreciate the time, effort, and wisdom you've shared with us. Thank you for everything. Our members, you are the backbone of this platform. Without your energy, engagement, and relentless support, BSL wouldn't be what it is today. Thank you for being with us on this journey and for making a real difference in the world through ground-level action you take in collaboration with us. This event today didn't just come together by its own. So here's a special shout out to the people who helped make it happen. You know who you are, and we are so grateful for your dedication, creativity, and commitment. You've helped this evening become something truly memorable. We can't forget our incredible sponsors, Dilma Ceylon Tea Company, Timo Lanka, HNB Assurance, and Dole Lanka. Thank you for believing in our mission and standing by us with no hesitation. Your support is absolutely crucial to everything we do. Special words of appreciation to our travel partner, Sri Lankan Airlines, and ProImage for producing the digital content. Also, our thanks to Dialogue for live streaming this event and for Deloitte Sri Lanka for the support extended today. I know she may not like it, but I have to do it, and I have to take a moment to express our deep appreciation to Mrs. Shirani Asaratna, our Senior Technical Advisor. Shirani, your guidance, passion, and commitment are unmatched. You've mentored so many people over the years and helped BSL reach incredible heights. Thank you for being a driving force behind everything we do. And of course, a massive thank you to the BSL team, Akram, Errol, Joshan, Zina, Jananga, Ashan, Sachini, Mandakini, Pumi, and our enthusiastic interns. You've been absolute rock stars in this past year. I'm so happy to join your dynamic and very supportive team, and I can't wait to see what we'll accomplish together. A special thanks to Hanan for your years of contribution to BSL. We wish you all the best in your new endeavors. Mr. Spencer Manipile, your unwavering encouragement and support in practical ways, you mean so much to us. Thank you. The final nod goes to the team at the Golf Face Hotel for your exceptional hospitality and for Inno Events for handling AV. You've made today's event flow seamlessly and left us with a beautiful experience to remember. To all of you here today, your presence and participation make this platform stronger. We couldn't be more excited to work with you as we head into a greener, more sustainable future together. And mind you, this is not mere rhetoric. We are referring to making ground-level impact and policy-level change happen in Sri Lanka. I would also like to convey the appreciation of BSL to Thuru for providing vegetable seed pods and pomegranate seeds for each of you to take as you go home today. Thank you once again. And now, let's enjoy some refreshments and good company. Have a great evening. You can watch a few partner videos as you get in closer to the evening. Thank you.